I'm Samantha and I'm here to talk about my lowest rated and DNF books for 2023. It has been an interesting reading year for me. It's kind of like a mid-range. Not a whole lot of books had wowed me, but also not a whole lot of books got on my shit list pretty much. But I am going to start out with talking about the books that I have that are low rated books, and we have my co-host in the background. We have Bravo and Harry soaking up some sun, and I have one window open, so if you hear outside noise, that's fine. The first book that on my low rated books for the year is The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. This was a pick for the Reading by Candlelight book club that I co-host with my friends Katie from Kit Kats Can Read and Alicia with Books and Things with Alicia. I was hoping that this was going to be a book that I really enjoyed because it's a dark academia with heavy leanings towards tarot or just the scholarly side of tarot. I found that part interesting, but the mystery part of the book didn't really feel all like a big mystery to me, and I kind of guessed who the bad guy was supposed to be, and I had a good feeling of where the book was heading, and it kind of just fell flat at the end for me. It has a beautiful cover, but I'm glad I didn't pick up a copy of the book when I saw it in Target before I started reading it, because I probably would be too frustrated with it being such a beautiful book cover and just an okay book. Book 2 is Carrie by Stephen King. I wasn't wowed by this one, and I was hoping that this would be the book that would have gotten me into Stephen King's writing. It's definitely dated. It's the well-known story about a girl who is bullied throughout her childhood because her mom is super religious and she's dealing with some abuse trauma from her mom along with being bullied from the kids at school, and it all kind of blows up during prom night. I also did what I did with The Shining. When I finished reading this book, I watched the adaptations. I watched the 70s version and the 2013 version, and honestly preferred the 2013 version over the older version and the book. I thought it was done really well, and this type of story really serves more of a movie format than it does a book, surprisingly. And a lot of times I tend to prefer the book over the adaptations, and when it isn't an adaptation, I tend to prefer the older ones to the newer ones, but this kind of just flipped everything on its head. And then we're continuing on with some well-known books that just didn't hit the spot for me. The next being The Girl Who Cried Monster by R.L. Stine. I am slowly but surely kind of working my way through Goosebumps books, and honestly, I don't think I have any more that I physically own that I need to read, so I may not end up finishing the series. His writing is just kind of meh for me. I do like his YA writings a little bit more than I do his middle grade. I think, have one YA book of his that I would like to reread to see what I think of it, but at this point in time, his middle grade books become too repetitive for me to really enjoy, and they have been dated, and the fat phobia that is rampant in some of his books is really off-putting. And the final book that I have for my low-rated books that also were disappointments is the infamous Bunny by Mona Awad. This is also a dark academia book that I read for my dark academia vlog. This year was kind of on and off for dark academias, and I think I have come to the realization that dark academia is not necessarily for me. I've had some okay ones, but none of them that got above 4 stars or even above 3.5 stars. They all are in mid-range. And I went into this book knowing that it was going to be weird, but I wasn't, but knowing that didn't really help me like it anymore. There was one stretch of time that it seems like the drug-induced haze part was just really done really well, and it got to the point where I had no clue what was happening, and I know that was the point of that part of the book, but I am just not a fan of those types. If I am confused and it feels like I myself am in a haze while reading the book, I just don't gel with it. So I may give this another try in the future to see if my thoughts have changed, because I do own a Kindle copy of this book, and I have an arc of All Is Well from NetGalley that I need to read. I am willing to give her writing another shot. I just don't know if she's going to be a favorite author of mine. So those are the 4 books that were my low rated, like, kind of disappointments for the year. Now we're going to get into the books that I DNFed. And honestly, I kind of like had even feeling. It's like 4 for low rated and 4 DNF books. So it's not a terrible lineup, but let's just jump into it. The first being You Are Psychic by Cher Margolis. The writing of this book was like I was being talked down to, and I had originally grabbed a copy from my library, not even realizing I actually had a review copy of this from NetGalley. I unfortunately could not get into it. She's supposed to be a well-known, like, celebrity psychic, and she writes kind of like she knows it all almost, or at least that's the tone that I got from her, and I felt it was kind of condescending and just could not get into it, so I put it down. Next is The Ruin of All Witches by Malcolm Gaskill. This is supposed to be a, like, nonfiction book that is based in the Salem witch trials, I believe. The tone was really dry. I could barely, I don't even think I really even got 50 pages into this book. It was just too textbook sounding. I had a hard time staying focused. If I can get my hands on an audiobook copy of this, I think I would enjoy it a lot more. Just reading it physically, and with, like, I believe it had a bunch of footnotes in it as well. I just could not get into it. Then we had kind of an older book that you can tell that it's an older book. It's Black Girl, White Girl by Patricia Moyes. This is very dated. I couldn't get into it. It was supposed to be kind of like a cozy mystery type of thing set in, I think, Australia. And it's part of a series, but the tone and some of the verbiage that's in this book, you can tell that it's a dated book, and I just did not really see the need, that I didn't feel like I had to finish the book, and it wasn't even a very long book either. I think it was barely 200 pages. I just could not get into it, so I had to put it down. And last, and sadly I feel kinda bad about DNFing this one, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is like a booktube darling for people, and it was also part of the Dark Academia vlog. I could not get into it. The pacing was too slow for me. All the additional footnotes into it made it sound like textbook reading, and it just paired with the heavy academic plot. I just could not get into it. I like learning about languages. I don't like being lectured about languages and learning, like, diving, like, super heavy into the history of it. I like the learning the mechanics and the, when you're learning a new language, the mechanisms going behind that. I'm not as interested in the history of some language. I got a little over 100 pages into it, and it started to pick up from there, but I even switched to audiobook and could not get into it. I just don't think I was in the right headspace for this book, so I will probably pick it up at a later date and then see if it gets any better for me, but I just don't think I was in the right headspace for a good chunk of like the dark academia books, or I'm just, this year just was not the year of dark academia for me. But yeah, those were the 8 books that were a bit of a disappointment and DNF books for me. Let me know in the comments below what you had DNF'd for this past year. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to keep up to date with any new videos I come out with in the future. And until then, you guys.